here. Always gracious and unruffled, January brought the festival to national prominence, and she helped create its inclusive, celebratory atmosphere, the fruits of which we enjoy tonight. January is, of course, also an amazing and dedicated poet. Her fourth collection, Glitter Road, is forthcoming in 2024 from Cavan Carey Press. Her most recent collection, Rewilding, was a finalist for the Massachusetts Book Award for Poetry, and Misery Islands won that award. Both those collections and her first book, Underlife, were also published by Cavan Carey. January's poems and articles have appeared in the New York Times Magazine, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series, the American Poetry Review, Poetry, Sierra Magazine, among many others. Her poem at the rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial was a co-winner of the 2022 Allen Ginsberg Poetry Award from the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College. She is the recipient of fellowships from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Cave Canem, and the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund. January was the 2019 to 2020 John and Renee Grisham Writer-in-Residence at the University of Mississippi, Oxford, an experience that served as the foundation for her upcoming collection. She is an associate professor at Salem State University and currently serves as the board chair of the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, AWP. None of us would be here at this event this weekend were it not for January's amazing work building the festival in the Massachusetts poetry community, which she still passionately supports. We are all lucky to know such an amazing person and an amazing poet, an ambassador for poetry, a true believer in its power to bring people together and to bring about positive change. Indeed, she is that change. January Gill O'Neill.
This is what it's like to be on the other side. So, wonderful readings tonight from Susan and Andrea, just amazing. Such a pleasure to hear your work. MP, MP. I couldn't think of a better person to take the reins. Thank you. And also, a shout out to Daniel Johnson and Michael and Sarah. It just, mass poetry is an amazing machine that you have built. I just want to remind everybody that MP and Daniel and Michael are all fabulous poets, and that's why this festival does so well. It's because it's run by them, by you, by us. So thank you all. So I'm going to do some new poems and some old poems. So as MP mentioned, in 2019, I took my teenagers down to Mississippi as I won a fellowship, and we spent a year learning about what it's like to be in the Deep South. And I'm from Virginia. Thrown in the water was damaged. It was full of bullet holes, and that was done by 3 Old Miss students. So in going down to that campus, the University of Mississippi, that felt pretty daunting, but that wasn't the only thing going on. The state itself was trying to decide if it was going to keep its stars and bars flag, the Confederate flag. It was the last state to use it as a state flag. And also on campus, there was a statue, a Confederate statue that had been on the property since 1920. And so every time a student would walk on the campus, they'd have to see that statue. So it felt like a tumultuous time to go down. But as I say about Mississippi, it will surprise you. It is exactly what you might expect, and it's not at all what you would expect. So I'm going to read a few poems and try to bridge that to some of my work here in Massachusetts. So this is a headline from U.S. News, USA Today report. 3 white Old Miss students used guns to vandalize a memorial to lynching victim Emmett Till. They pose their bodies as if they've just bagged their first 10-point buck. One holds a shotgun, another squats below the shot-up sign, a third stands with an AR-15. 3 faces smiling, hoisting guns in front of a bullet-ridden marker. This is the on the crowded bus. We travel with police Thank you. And so, I think about how important it is that we tell these stories and we tell our own stories, and that they matter, because if we don't do it, no one else will, and they'll be forgotten. And so I think about this next poem about my son, who is coming home on Monday from Syracuse. university. But when I wrote this poem, he was about 13, and I think about the through line of Emmett Till and the young black boys that are just treated horribly by the police. Hoodie. A gray hoodie will not protect my son from rain, from the New England cold. I see the partial eclipse of his face as his head sinks into the half-dark and shades his eyes. Even in our quiet suburb with its unlocked doors, I fear for his safety, the darkest child on our street in the empire of blocks. Sometimes I do not know who he is anymore, traveling the back roads between boy and man. He strides a deep stride, pounds a basketball into wet pavement. Will he take his shot, or is he waiting for the open-mouthed orange rim to take a chance on him? I sing his name to the night, ask for safe passage from this borrowed body into the next, and wonder who could mistake him for anything but good. Thank you. And so we left Mississippi in 2020, but we were there for 7 months, and then COVID hit, and then we were in lockdown. So the one thing I didn't get to do while we were down there was take a trip on the Mississippi River. But we went back in 2021, and we were able, when it was a little safer, to travel. And so we went down to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and we rented a canoe, and we were out for the day. The river remembers. Here, the water is silt brown, stretches mile wide, flat as a washed out conveyor belt, an unhemmed rumble strip. I can't read the river, can't see my hand when it plunges elbow deep to feel the cool against the Mississippi heat, hot as a dog's mouth. Here, we canoe for hours through swirling eddies, watch the trash barges and towboats travel downstream. The river glistens hard as broken glass. Here, everything is fluid. In lower Mississippi, the south, where the two-lane blacktop cuts through an infinity of flat, cotton, soybean, corn, farm, tumble-down shack. Creeks and rivers bifurcate the land like blood veins. Here, the GPS gives up. New islands form at the current's whim, and what is untouched grows lush and verdant. Willow and privet border the collapsing coastline. A carp leaps into the boat when it hears us coming. We stop here in an oxbow. Gumbo mud sticks to our feet. River rock, plastic, fossils, gar. Raccoon and coyote leave tracks in the rust-colored sand. The slaves, sold down the river, hid here, waited for their chance to escape up north, hid in caves, fled to the Twin Cities in Canada, their fate at the mercy of the river's next rise. Here's the nadir of our suffering, which started in one place to end in another. Here's where flow and marvel and history converge, this harm joy, this beautiful sadness. And so our time in Mississippi was amazing, I have to say. It wasn't, there was a lot to learn about the history of slavery, really from a unique perspective, but there was a lot of joy on this trip. And I always sort of like to cushion the two. So the award that I won was the John and Renee Grisham Fellowship at the University of Mississippi, and it was funded by John Grisham, the author. So, you know, he wrote The Firm, and he's, you know, and several other books. I slept in John Grisham's bed. A bed on stilts, queen-sized, with a well in the center I'd always roll into. White-pilled sheets, threadbare and thinning. I worked hard to earn that bed and the room surrounding it, meaning I must have written words once that meant something. Big wide windows look on to a cluster of magnolias that never lose their leaves. No blinds. I like to let the light in. I imagine John Grisham plotting out a bestseller, yellow legal pad in hand, kids like mine bouncing on mattresses high enough to touch the ceiling fan. This bed I have shared with many authors and lovers who also wrote words that meant something. They slept here too, loved here on this bed that scoots away from the wooden headboard from too much movement. Can't help but laugh at the bedroom door that doesn't lock, sliding a chair in front of it for privacy, or the attic we were afraid to enter, the creak of the floorboards above our heads. And when I think my big thoughts about the world, time travel, or black holes, or God, or death, I'd come to the bed's blank page against the shimmer of sky glow. First sex after divorce. I'm eating an empire after cursing the tree. The crunch, the tear, the juice streaming from the corners when there's too much in the mouth. Where to put the tongue and how to make it last. The tart perfume, the beautiful stem, the small seeds. Freeing the peel from the skin and dissolving it into pulp. The next bite, and then the next. Eve knew what she wanted long before it had a name. The curved structure, the mounted flesh, a grove within a grove, an orchard red and hot. Praise the tree from which it fell and the gravity that brought it down. Praise what remains. Praise Newton's third law of motion. Praise the physics of cupping my hands around the fruit. Praise the fruit itself. Praise the doctors who prescribe it daily. Praise hunger. Praise sweet want. The feast of flesh and the hard cider. So in Mississippi, I also fell in love, so wasn't all bad down there. The great hello. A big-ass moon rises full and wide in the western sky. The deep pond awakens with tongues of bullfrogs. I'm barely over the threshold before our mouths lock and we slither onto the bed. We watch each other watching each other with a silent urging, a kindness for the other in pursuit of pleasure. I fling my head back as he grabs my hips, pulls me close, begin to feel myself levitate, hovering above the bed as the shadow of someone I don't recognize but have known all her life. I am an over-easy egg trying not to break her yolk, but I do. The joy of leaving the body tender and shimmering. A moment of gratitude for every daunting thing that brought me to this place where I am my most fearless, my most true. I wick the sweat from his head, slide my hand across his glistening skin before crawling back into myself, sprawled across the sheets, streaked in moonlight. So I think I'm going to close with a few more local poems. And since I was talking about this Boston poem on the way in tonight, I'll read this one. Old South Meeting House. We draw breath from brick, step on stones, weather-worn, cobbled and carved with the story of this church, this meeting house, where Ben Franklin was baptized and Phyllis Wheatley prayed, a mouth house where colonists gathered to plot against the crown. This structure, with elegant curves and round-top windows, was the heart of Boston, the body of the people. Served occupation for preservation, foregoing decoration for conversation. Let us gather in the box pews, once numbered and rented by generations of families held together like ribs in the body politic. Let us gaze upon the upper galleries to the free seats where the poor and the town slaves listened and waited and pondered and prayed for revolution. Let us testify to the plight of the well-meaning at the pulpit, with its sounding board high above, congregations raising their heads and hands to the sky. We, the people, the tourists and the townies, one nation under this vaulted roof, exalted voices, speaking poetry out loud in praise and dissent. We draw breath from brick. Ignite the fire in us. Speak to us. The language is hope. So I live in the next town over in Beverly, and I teach at Salem State, and so this area is, I've been here 20 years now, more than 20. But when my kids were younger, I still like going out and dancing. We couldn't do that when you had young kids, but we had the Roller Palace. How many of you remember the Roller Palace? Okay. So I miss it. It's been gone 3 years. I think there's a self-storage place over there. Night at the Roller Palace. After the birthday crowds thin out, after the hokey pokey and chicken dance, after the parents have towed their shaky kids like cabooses ready to decouple, and the pint-sized skaters have circled the rink like a gang of meerkats spun into a 10-car pileup, you turn sideways and angle by as another one bites the dust, thumps overhead. You give a finger point to the DJ stand because in your mind, we are soldiers in the march against time, grooving to the retro beat while the disco ball shines overhead, cut crystal against rainbow walls. You glide like Mercury or Apollo Ono, without wings or skin suit, in lowrider jeans that hug your body like you hug corners. Past them all on the smoothed-out parquet floor, worn down by time and rhythm. The trick is to make it look effortless. Remind them that your quickness is a kind of love. You are the spark between wood and wheel. And when your cranky kids hang out by the wall ready to go, holding those 8 wheels by their brown leather tongues, you give them a wave and keep circling. Just one more song, you say. This is your me time. It's all skate. You've got your whole self in. That's what it's all about. Okay. And so I'll close with the Salem poem. This one is very local. A few years ago, when the old power plant was torn down, some of the local artists got to go in. So I remember seeing John Andrews, who's walking around with his camera tonight, and Colleen Michaels and J.D. Scrimger, and a lot of us went in there, and we got to write. And there were just a lot of us inside this hollowed out building before it came down. Love song for the decommissioned power plant. After the workers clocked out, after the financiers and analysts, after the risk assessors, after the mayor, the developers, the hazmat teams, the environmentalists, reporters, and electricians, after the demolition crew and hazmat teams again, the VCs and architects, the bankers and the 1-800 junkers, they sent in the artists to reimagine the destruction. The photographers who captured particleized air in a shutter, fog rising inside the building, dank and chilled and unforgiving. What does it feel like to be ghost hollow? Ask the sculptures, who will configure boxes upon boxes of steel rods, fissures, and orange wire connectors into something astonishing. What happens to all that sacrificed zinc, the cheapest of metals, the last vestiges of an industrial age? Ask the playwrights who will recreate stripped copper and brass as backdrops to his next dystopian production. Who will speak for the cinder blocks and silent machinery? Who sees gray turbines grand as whales surfacing and the cranes and dumpsters leave? Who will foretell the coming of green space pushed up through the seepage of mud as if the world has already happened? Ask the poets who will write this new space into being, the sky tilting a little closer to the sun, glistening over the gray waters of the Atlantic. They are trained to harness power where there is none. Thank you.
Thank you. What a fantastic night. Can we get one more round of applause to all of our amazing performers? Thank you again. And this is just the beginning. We have a full weekend of exciting events for you. I can't wait to see you all there. I encourage you to support the poets tonight and throughout the weekend by buying their books. Our headliners will be signing over on the right here in just a moment, or I guess the left. And you can buy their books right outside the front doors. The bookstore is there with those, and they'll be signing right over there. In addition, Mass Poetry pays honorariums for all of our performers this weekend, in addition to year-round programming in schools across Massachusetts, public art poetry projects, and more. None of that would be possible without your support. Our team will be outside ready to take donations, so thank you very much in advance and for all the donations you've already made being here. I can't wait to see you all the rest of the weekend. Thanks.